Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. It's episode 52, Better Man, a movie that, in all honesty, when I saw the first trailer and was like, why is there a monkey in a biopic? I thought, I'm going to hate this. It's going to bomb. It's going to be so terrible, and what a conversation we're going to have about this movie today. I hope you're all doing well. Let's take a moment for society to realize how shit of a week the last 7 days has been. My heart goes out to everybody in LA affected by the fires, and I'm gonna include a little donation thing at the end of the show that you can find in the show notes. That please, I'd love if you could check it out. But I'll be honest, I wasn't sure if I was gonna talk about this, but it's been like an also terrible week for me. I did get laid off from my job. This is my first time ever getting laid off from like a big boy job. That sucked ass, to be honest. It was a shitty week, and I'm very happy that I get to do this now, take my mind off things, as well as I was very happy to go to the movies and see a couple of films in one night the day I got laid off. Literally seeing this movie 8 hours after I got laid off from my job it hit very hard. So I'm excited to talk about lots of stuff today. A couple things before we get into the news, which there's tons of news to talk about this week. We got casting, we got project updates, we have some pilots being fixed up, some home release changes versus theatrical versions, but timestamps below. If you don't want to know anything about Robbie Williams and you want to go see this movie completely blind, you can go right to what else I watched after the news section, or if you're fine with the non-spoiler section, I will keep it very, very non-detailed or not very spoilery. I promise. The non-spoiler is very non-spoilery. That's all linked below, but before all that, let's get into the news. All right, news of the week. So first story from World of Real, it looks like Damien Chazelle is going to be working on an Evel Knievel on tour film with Leonardo DiCaprio set to star as the titular character. This is kind of crazy. I feel like Damien Chazelle, of course, since Babylon has been in director's jail, I feel like that's a very publicly known thing, and it was kind of shocking because he's made amazing films like Whiplash, First Man, La La Land, one of my favorite movies of all time. So it was a shame that like after one mixed review movie, he gets put in director jail when there's people that are way worse at their job than him that have made 4 movies since they made a flop. But it looks like, according to World of Real, last month, a report indicated that Damien Chazelle's next film would tackle the stunt devil Evel Knievel and star Leonardo DiCaprio. It looks like this project is legit, and there's some more details that have emerged via Production Weekly. If you don't know, Production Weekly is this website that kind of gives insider scoops, not insider scoops, but updates schedules about when movies are set to shoot in LA, New York, London, where they're shooting, stuff like that. So I think it's kind of used for production people that are in the business who want to apply to be, whether it's PAs or whatever they want to work on. But the film is apparently called Evel Knievel on Tour. It's written by William Monahan, who wrote The Departed, and Terrence Winter, who wrote The Wolf of Wall Street and The Sopranos. And this will also not be a straight up rise and fall biopic. Instead, the story is set in a single year, 1974, and tackles Knievel's ambitious planning to jump across Idaho's Snake River on his motorcycle. See, I like that. I like biopics that are like a focused time. I know A Complete Unknown, a lot of people have called it mid, have called it like nothing special, and I don't know. I kind of agree that it's nothing special of a biopic and it's the performances that make it great, but I do like that they focused purely on Dylan rising in the industry and going electric. Like it's just 4 years that they focused on versus today, the story we're going to talk about isn't a person's whole life, but it is certainly a large portion of it. So I do like the idea of an Evel Knievel film that's like 1 year and only one single thing that he did in his career. That's kind of fun to me. Also, Leonardo DiCaprio, I haven't seen him in a film since Don't Look Up, so at least it'll be a nice return to screen for him. Damien Chazelle is one of my favorite directors, like Whiplash, one of my favorite movies, easily. La La Land, I will die for that film. I don't care. I would give it all up for La La Land. If I could pay to go back in time, have my memory wiped, watch La La Land for the first time. Not sure if I can emotionally handle watching La La Land right now after getting laid off. La La Land is one of the best. I love Damien Chazelle's energy and direction and his colors, and Linus Sandgren, right, who did Babylon, apparently might do Dune Messiah, I don't know, but I just love the teams that Damien Chazelle assembles for his movies because they all look great. Actually, First Man, the astronaut movie with Ryan Gosling, is the only one I don't think I've seen by Damien Chazelle, so maybe I will watch that this week. Who knows? But this looks like a cool project. So Chazelle's last film, Babylon, Babylon tanked at the box office, making $63 million against a production budget of a little under $100 million. Babylon ultimately lost Paramount an estimated $87 million, but oddly enough, it was a huge hit in France with both critics and audiences. So a few months ago, Chazelle actually told Vanity Fair that he's now working on 2 projects and didn't know which one he was going to get made first. Evel Knievel's still in development, but things are revving up fast enough that World of Real wouldn't be surprised if it was indeed his next film. Well, that's fun to see a great director and one of the great voices in Hollywood working on their next film after, so what, they had one semi-dud. It lost money, but it was critically okay received, Babylon. People were a little bit mixed on it. I'm not a huge fan of Babylon. I don't know. I see annoying people on the internet constantly posting about, oh, Babylon, the hatred was unnecessary and people just wanted to bring Chazelle down and it's actually a great movie and we're going to look back 20 years. Maybe we will, but stop being obnoxious about it. Oh my dear God. All right, let's move on to another story that I actually foresaw this happening in the future. 5 days ago, I predicted this story and this week it was announced and I felt like, I've predicted the future. Listen al gaib. Sony has announced Helldivers 2 film is in production. So the Sony smash hit PlayStation Studios video game Helldivers 2 is being adapted into a film. Helldivers 2, if you don't know, it's like the space colonization game where you fight robots and bugs on these different planets in teams online of 4 or less if you want, and also you can just spawn in by itself. It's a great game. If you have a PS5, I would totally recommend Helldivers 2. I don't know if it's on PS4, but it's my favorite game to play on PS5. It's so much fun. And literally 5 days ago, I was playing with my friend and my brother. I said I can't wait for Amazon or Sony to announce a Helldivers 2 movie because they're making every video game is getting turned into a movie. Fallout, Warhammer's not a video game, it's more of a role-play game, right? Or Dungeons and Dragons or The Witcher TV series. Every video game is getting turned into movies now. That's the new superhero thing. And I called it. I felt so vindicated that this was happening. So IGN said, announced during Sony's CES 2025 press conference, the Helldivers 2 movie is a collaboration between Sony Productions and Sony Pictures with no other details offered. So Helldivers 2 from developer Arrowhead is of course heavily inspired by a cult classic sci-fi movie Starship Troopers. It sees soldiers of the future struggle to defend a fascist super-Earth regime against alien robots called automatons and bugs called terminids, all the while preaching managed democracy. Yeah, it is it's so much fun to play because yes, you're playing as the fascist super-Earth regime, but it almost feels like you're playing in a satire where we know our team is so stupid and every time they say something it's for democracy or something. It's something dumb like that. So it's honestly a very funny game. My prediction of what the story's probably going to be, it's going to be about someone working for Super Earth and then they see that they're fascist or whatever and they turn against Super Earth and they decide to work for the robots or the bugs or whatever it is. So this could be really cool. I guess it is going to be a movie and not a limited series like Fallout was or The Witcher or whatever. I'm very excited. I love Helldivers and I always say to whoever I'm playing with, this would be such a cool world for a movie. I think it's so easy to adapt and there's so much cool sci-fi element about it. I didn't know it's based on Starship Troopers. So I think this is actually going to be a smash hit, could do very well. But let's move on to another project that was announced this week. According to Variety, Holes TV series picked up to pilot by Disney+. The potential show would be based on the book of the same name by Louis Satcher, which was previously adapted into a 2003 film by Walt Disney Pictures. A classic film. This is something that I grew up with. Holes was something that was just a cultural staple for me as a kid. I was 3 years old when it came out. I remember being terrified of it because there's the snakes, right? The snakes thing where the snakes bite people or whatever. And Angelina Jolie's crazy dad is in it, right? Isn't he the sheriff or something like that, or the camp owner? I can remember. I was just I got bad vibes from him as a very young child and I was scared of Holes. But Alina Menken serves as writer and executive producer, while Liz Fang will serve as showrunner and executive producer. Drew Goddard will executive produce via Goddard Textiles along with Sarah Esberg, and Walden Media, which produced the film, is also producing the pilot and has been attempting to get a series version of the book off the ground for some time, according to sources. The official logline for the project states, if you don't know what Holes is, in this reimagining of the beloved 1998 book from Louis Satcher, a teenage girl is sent to a detention camp where the ruthless warden forces the campers to dig holes for a mysterious purpose. So the book told the story of Stanley Yelnats, an unlucky boy who is sent to a juvenile detention camp for a crime he did not commit. There you go. They're going to do a gender swap where it's a young girl instead. So trying to differentiate it from whatever. It might be a completely different story that just happens to also be a similar plot, but they might go, because it's a TV show, they have much more time to fill. So I'm excited. Whatever. I don't know. know, there's been times where maybe a TV show version could be better of this movie because there's not enough time to do justice for the book. Who knows? Like, maybe we're entering the era of movies that were based on books now becoming TV shows like Harry Potter, which I guess is really ramping up production because it's said that starting this summer they're going to be filming the first season, and it's going to be a one per year type thing, I guess. So I guess this is our new thing. Maybe they're moving away from superheroes being the big thing now, and they're trying to find the new thing they can milk. So that'll be coming to Disney Plus. I'm definitely going to watch it. Holes was, as I said, a part of my childhood, and I have no doubt that if they cast someone big for kids nowadays, this could be a big thing for them as well. Okay, coming from Deadline, Jacob Elordi is in talks for Ridley Scott's The Dog Stars. So Jacob Elordi is in early talks to lead The Dog Stars, Ridley Scott's post-apocalyptic thriller for 20th Century Studios based on the 2012 novel by Peter Heller. And here's what's interesting. Elordi looks set to step in for Scott's Gladiator 2 star Paul Mescal, who was forced to depart due to scheduling conflicts after being tapped to star in Sam Mendes' Beatle anthology, where he's rumored to be playing Paul McCartney. Scott first hinted at the possibility of Mescal's exit in a December conversation with filmmaker Christopher Nolan on Gladiator 2. Fascinating. So it looks like the Beatles biopics are fully ramping up this year. I still am not sure who is playing the fourth Beatle. I think they have Ringo, John, and Paul cast, but I don't think they have George Harrison, do they? It's fascinating, but I'm still unsure what those projects look like. Like I said a couple weeks ago, is it 4 movies leading into one team-up movie like Avengers, or is it just 4 movies and it's each their own individual experience of what the Beatles was like? I would like that. That would be cool, of like 4 different point of views of one event pretty much. That would be really fun. I mean, it's a bummer that Paul Mescal is leaving that film, but maybe, I don't know, maybe he's not a big blockbuster action guy. Maybe he's a more emotional, small drama, or a big drama, but just more of a drama guy, and that's what the Beatles biopics could be. They could be a very emotional film, so I can kind of dig it. Jacob Elordi, I do think, I don't know if this will piss people off. It's not really a hot take to say you don't like an actor. I'm just going to say I'm not a big fan of Jacob Elordi. I think he was okay as Elvis, but he's a very monotone actor for me. He does a lot of the same thing every scene or every movie I see him in. He doesn't really seem to have a lot of versatility. I hope he can, prove me wrong with this film. Maybe this is what he got instead of American Psycho, because it was long said that he was going to be in Luca Guadagnino's remake of American Psycho, or another adaptation, sorry. So maybe this is the project he's taking on because he didn't get that. I hope he can prove me wrong. I hope Ridley Scott can really, just get the magic back. I think Gladiator 2 was okay. It was a lot of fun, but it's still not, big stuff that makes you marvel at cinema. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's like, yeah, this is, a legacy sequel. It's the second one, and it's pretty much telling the first movie over again. I really haven't liked a movie he's done since probably The Martian. I guess, yeah, probably The Martian, which just this week he was like, oh, nobody knew that was a comedy. It's like, dude, I thought it was a comedy. I thought it was hilarious. It was a great movie. But Jacob Elordi set to step in for Paul Mescal in Ridley Scott's next film. All right, final piece of news. Ian Holmes' CGI for the home release of Alien Romulus was apparently improved. Fede Alvarez said, quote, "It's so much better." So, as we talked about in summer, and as Empire Magazine reported, when Alien Romulus arrived last summer, it brought cinema's greatest sci-fi horror franchise screaming into new life. Had tons of callbacks, of course, but as Empire says here, those callbacks didn't always come without controversy. One surprise awaiting audiences when the arrival of android character Rook, given the face of the late great Ian Holm, who played nefarious bot Ash in Scott's original Alien. The result on screen, though, was somewhat uncanny, which became the subject of much discussion among fans. Fede Alvarez commented saying, "We just ran out of time in post-production to get it right because he thinks that they weren't quite convinced or weren't quite ready. Quote, I wasn't 100% happy with some of the shots where you could feel a bit more the CGI intervention. So for people that react negatively, I don't blame them." And talking about the home release, he says, "We fixed it. We made it better for the release right now. I convinced the studio we need to spend money and make sure we give the companies that were involved in making it the proper time to finish it and do it right. It's so much better." I'm not sure that's the issue that people had with it. I think, as we spoke about this summer, bringing people back from the dead in movies, the fact that his family was pushing for it and said, yes, do it, he would love that, that kind of takes away the weight of it for me. But at the same time, I'm not a huge fan of bringing back these fake models and fake CGI animatronic things of dead performers. No matter what the circumstances, I'm not a big fan of that. I think it's like a little bit creepy. Like I said, the problem people had with it is bringing a dead actor back and leaving us in that uncanny valley where we're all uncomfortable and leaving us in a morally gray area, when realistically Ash didn't add that much to the story. I think you could substitute him for another robot, another random robot that survived this ship played by a real human. And the story could have been like 10 times better. I think it even would have been way better received. I still really love Alien Romulus. In fact, I might rewatch it. I get what he's saying, that like, oh, it's nice of him to offer that time of being like, oh, do you guys want to improve it for the home release because these artists deserve it? It's like you're doing a morally questionable thing in the most moral way possible. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag for me. I don't know if we could kind of lean away from bringing dead people back like they did in The Flash or in Alien Romulus or even Rogue One. Like, I remember, how old was I when Rogue One came out? Probably 16. And I was like, oh, this is weird. They feel so leathery and waxy. I do think Rogue One is the best example of bringing a dead person back. I think that's the best that will ever be. But Alien Romulus, I wasn't that big on it because I did feel it didn't really serve the story so much. So here, I'll plug my Alien Romulus episode from this summer. Go check it out. That was from August. You can find it on all your streaming platforms and YouTube. Go check out the Alien Romulus review. But I think that's going to do it for the news this week. As I said, timestamps below. Before we get into the review, I do want to plug a few things from the social media. Lots of reviews this week. I did a Woman of the Hour review, another Creature Commandos review. Coming up the week that this releases, I am going to do my 2025 most anticipated movies. You can find that on all the social medias. I'm also going to be working on a YouTube video of top 5 movies from 2024 of the ones I've seen, because The Brutalist and The Last Showgirl and Nickel Boys all still have not released in Canada, and by the time I want to release the video, I'm still not going to be able to see them, which is so frustrating, but I still cannot wait to see The Brutalist. Look out for all of those things. If you're on the YouTube channel, make sure you're subscribing so you catch the video when it's out. Linktree is below. You can find all of my social media and stuff like that, but I think it is time to evolve into our review of Better Man. Timestamps below for non-spoiler, spoiler section, or go to What Else I Watch. Let's do it. Better Man. Better Man is a 2024 musical fantasy biopic. It doesn't say biopic on Google. I'm going to tell you, it's a biopic. Coming in at 2 hours, 15 minutes. Google's in a nutshell calling it sensational, creative, and rousing. I would totally agree. Currently holding an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes with like a 95% popcorn score. That's the audience meter. 7.7 on IMDb. 77% on Metacritic with 3.6 on Letterboxd being the average star rating, with the mode being 4 stars. It is directed by Michael Gracie, who did The Greatest Showman, and written by Simon Gleason, who did, I think, the Les Mis revival, as well as Oliver Cole and Michael Gracie, the director. Budget of $110 million. I mean, a CGI monkey, I'm not that surprised. Box office, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of questionable how it's doing. It wasn't really released that widely in America and Canada yet, or outside of the UK, so I think it's at like 8 million, maybe. The synopsis for Better Man. Follow Robbie Williams' journey from childhood to being the youngest member of chart-topping boy band Take That, through to his unparalleled achievements as a record-breaking solo artist, all the while confronting the challenges that stratospheric fame and success can bring. The film stars Robbie Williams is playing his own voice in the film. John O'Davies is also Robbie Williams, but I think he is the motion capture as well as singing some of the parts. I'm not really sure. I watched a bunch of interviews and I wasn't clear, like, wait, so who did what in this film? Rochelle Bano as Nicole Appleton, Damon Harriman as Nigel Martin Smith, Steve Pemberton as Peter Williams, Allison Steadman as Betty Williams, Kate Mulvaney as Janet Williams, Fraser Hadfield as Nate, Tom Budge as Guy Chambers, Anthony Hayes as Chris Heath, Jake Simmons as Gary Barlow, Jesse Hyde as Mark Owen, Carter J. Murphy as Young Robbie, Liam Head as Howard Donald, Chase Vollenweider as Jason Orange, and it's a massive cast. There's a bunch of people involved, but to a lot of you that will be gibberish because we don't know who any of those people are. This is a very British film. I feel like I don't know how popular Robbie Williams is in North America. From everything I understand, not really, but let's talk about Better Man. Initial thoughts. As I said in the intro, a monkey musical CGI biopic. I thought this is going to be a disaster. Why are we getting a Robbie Williams biopic? There's no one else that was interesting that you could put an animal in. Boy, oh boy, did I eat my words, because this was fantastic. It's dynamic. It's electric. It's brutally honest and so self-deprecating. This was wonderful. I was so entertained. I had so much fun, and there's so much I want to talk about with this film. Let's start with the performances, of course. John O'Davies as Robbie Williams in chimpanzee form, and like the motion capture, he's wonderful. Again, as I said, I'm not sure, like the lines kind of blur. I'm not sure who's singing what parts, who's acting what parts, but for all I know, John O'Davies did the motion capture stuff. He's very wonderful. I love the physicality of the film. It has such energy, really just leaning into the monkey aspect. Like, he is so primal and just a beast, and it's just, it works so well well in the film, which we'll talk about the whole monkey aspect. Robbie Williams himself as his adult voice, vocals, and narrator. I think he actually plays such an important part in this film, Robbie Williams. He makes it feel 10 times more honest about how shitty he was, how insecure he was, that it was never about loving what you do. It's about the fame and the money. Robbie deserves a lot of credit for being so open to the process and so hands-on and being such a big part of the story. And then Steve Pemberton as Peter Williams, or Peter Conway, Robbie's dad. He has such an important role in the film as well, and I think he plays it extremely well. He has a very difficult part of being a washed up dad, pretty much, and there's such a sadness to him that we always feel bad for him in the film, and I won't give anything away about specific events, but a very sad figure that's a part of Robbie's life. Kate Mulvaney as Betty Williams, his mom, not really part of the story that much. Seems like his relationship with his dad and his grandma, much more of the interesting parts of the story, or much more of the focused parts of the story. I don't feel like there's that much to chew on with his mom. I feel like that's kind of put on the back burner a little bit, but Kate Mulvaney does a wonderful job as Betty Williams, and there's a lot of grounding from her. I feel like she really brings the story back to the family element along with his grandmother, played by Allison Steadman as Betty Williams. I thought she's fantastic in this as well. She's the heartbeat of this movie. As much as, you know, John O'Davies and Robbie Williams play an important part, really Allison Steadman as Betty Williams, his nan, she is the heartbeat of the movie. She's what makes him see himself in a positive way. Without her, this story and his life would be a lot less than it is now, and I don't know if he would have made it as far as he would have. Also, just like the supporting cast, very good. Everybody is really great in this. Everyone gives a pretty standard biopic performance, I would say. Oh, Robbie, you're such a performer. Oh, Robbie, you're such an asshole. Oh, Robbie, you're such an angel. Everybody's purpose or everybody's existence in this film is to talk about Robbie Williams. No one feels like they really have their own life they want to talk about or their own aspirations. It's all just like informing Robbie of why they exist and how their existence ties in with him, which it's a biopic. That's how it is. But let's talk about the story itself, this biopic. It's pretty standard. You're not going to be really shocked by a lot, I don't think, or at least, you know, everything you would expect from a biopic is there, but they add a lot of elements that I think kind of makes this a little bit better than anything else we've seen. The way they tell Robbie's story is so fantastic. Like, there's so much use of poppy color, imagery, fantastical elements, and it was just such a breath of fresh air to watch Better Man in an age where we have a biopic every 4 months. Like, we just got A Complete Unknown, and it just feels like every week we're getting a biopic announcement that some young up-and-coming good-looking star is going to be playing this other star, and literally the only biopic that I've really enjoyed was A Complete Unknown, and that's only because one of my favorite actors was in it, and he's giving one of the best performances of his career. Of course I'm gonna like the movie. Even if I thought the story that wasn't that significant, I still really like the performances. Like, I feel like I'm Club Chalamet right now. But this, on the other hand, I thought not only was the story phenomenal, even if it's pretty predictable, what Michael Gracie did with this film, fantastic. All of the combinations of energy and the music, and it is a jukebox musical. It's all Robbie Williams songs, apart from one Frank Sinatra song, and I guess Take Back songs. And obviously, yes, they change a lot, and they actually sort of combine events in his life to make it a tight runtime, of course, because it is a movie. But I think the story that they decided to tell, or that Robbie felt was like, yes, I accept that. That's the most honest version we can tell in this version. And I know for a fact they did share some elements of the script with other people that are in this story, which I think is a very respectable thing to do, as well as to avoid lawsuits. So they do change a lot, and they try to tell it in the most honest way, and it needs to focus on Robbie, of course. But the story they tell feels so fresh, so exciting, absolutely devastating as well. And like, we should talk about Michael Gracie. He did The Greatest Showman, a movie tons of people love. People love the music from that. That's a really interesting film, The Greatest Showman. I would look up, like, just go on its Wikipedia page, because they put it out in theaters. It looked like it was going to flop, and the studio decided, you know what, we're just going to keep it in theaters. And slowly but surely, through word of mouth, it just made its money back, and it was a smash hit. And they did like Greatest Showman on the Road or whatever, and Michael Gracie did that film. And I think he has another knockout, really great movie on his hands, because Michael Gracie, simply put, he has the sauce. This movie is so well directed, and he brings this script to life in such an out-of-body way. There were sequences I did not believe in this film that I was like, holy shit, we're seeing a monkey on screen. There's a really interesting use of water and like driving fast and cars and feathers and all this really cool, very cabaret energy to this film, because his father was like a cabaret host type thing. The camera work and the energy, I'm gonna say energy a lot in this episode, because that's really what this movie had. Like 2 hours 15 minutes for the biopic. We'll get to pacing in a moment, but there's still so much much energy in this film. And also, like, they really delay the title sequence in this film. I'm not going to tell you when it pops up. I feel like so much has already happened in the movie before we even get the title card. But pacing wise, I will say a little long. The ending felt like it had a few different endings in mind, kind of big event after big event, and then it just keeps winding back down, back up. There's also some sequences where it feels like we're flashing through years of his career and maybe miss a lot. It feels like some moments they were really rushing through it, and I'm like, whoa, slow down. Like, some big things just happened. Can we sit with that? Like, it doesn't need to just be about Robbie. It can be about things that affected him and other people. But it feels like some moments they put in a montage and it's like, oh dear God, we're moving. Strange pacing to this film. I think it slows down at some times and you can really feel how long it's running. But then there's other times where it just picks up and it's like, oh my dear God, I can't keep track of what's happening. Or wait, has this actually happened, or is this fantasy? Or we don't really get full answers on things. But back to the story and kind of its general themes, the movie asks all the classic questions from biopics about fame. Like, can it heal us? What does it really cost us? Does it take talent to get fame? Even as a child, Robbie says, like, my head speaks a language I don't understand. That's from, I think, the first song of the film called Feel. But just like the language he's using even as a kid, and the words really do hit you from the start of the film, and you realize, oh, we're going to get a lot of big questions in this that are in every biopic, but the way they answer it is just amazing. Like, my head speaks a language I don't understand. This kid is messed up from childhood. His mental health is really suffering, and like most biopics, I don't know, it's about how fame affects your personal relationships. When you make it big, what happens to your family and your friends, you know? You lose yourself. But still, even if it's familiar, it doesn't mean the relationships of this film don't deserve praise, because every dynamic in this movie is so well written. Even for his mom, who I said maybe is less important to the story, I still really enjoyed a few scenes that he has with his mother, and I thought they really just hit hard. But every dynamic in the movie, so well written. I cried several times, and that's not just because I lost my job a few hours before this movie. I think I'm an easy crier as well, but this movie hit me. It punched me in the gut. And like, what's funny is I think even people like myself, maybe, who have no clue who Robbie Williams is, will still enjoy this. I only vaguely know who he is because just knowing like British pop culture or British culture in general, I'm a big soccer fan. So I know who Robbie Williams is. I knew a few of his songs, but I didn't really know his career trajectory. So it was really interesting to kind of put the pieces together and be like, oh, a lot of him makes sense now as someone from another generation as well. Like, the end of the movie is 2001. That's the final year where the story ends. And I would have been 1 year old. So like, most of his career, or most of the big stuff he's done, really took place before I was not shitting my pants as a child. But like, being a soccer fan, so many fan channels I watch and different things like reference Robbie Williams. His father was a Manchester United fan, which is my favorite team, and I've seen Robbie Williams involved in some Man United stuff, but he's a Port Vale fan, so a little bit different. But anyways, let's not get sidetracked. I think it works so well, as I mentioned before, because Robbie Williams is so involved and it's not a new star playing him. Like, yes, there is John O'Davies playing him in the motion capture and some of his vocals, I think, and like voicing him, but Robbie is a very important part of this story. It's not like A Complete Unknown or Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man, where a star, a very recognizable star of our day, is playing this person, so it's easier to connect multiple generations with this story. No, it's a monkey playing him, so the task at hand, much bigger than any other movie. It's not someone doing a really good impression. It's like, oh, this is a monkey, and it's hard to tell who's Robbie and who's John O'Davies voicing. So credit to John O'Davies, because he's not a Timothy Chalamet, an Austin Butler, a Rami Malek. He is a lesser known actor to a lot of the world. I think he would probably agree, and he does a fantastic job, and he has a really interesting role of doing motion capture for a pop star, and Robbie's role is really important to the story as well. The film uses narration, as mentioned, by Robbie Williams, and I think it really sets the tone. Literally from the first scene, he's narrating, and he tells you from the get-go how much of a jerk he is, how much he loves fame and money and glamour and the pop star lifestyle. He's very open about that. This is not a movie trying to cleanse or polish an image. This is a guy being very open about some terrible habits he had and some terrible moments in life he had and some very dark places he went. And it's very brutally honest. And again, how involved he is in the story. This is not someone else trying to tell a more clean version of a story and be like, oh, I really want to repair this favorite musicians of mine image or whatever it is, or I want to make things maybe more emotional than they were. There is parts of that in this, but I think it's a much more honest biopic than I've seen a lot of the time. It's very fascinating how much, I don't know, the film revolutionizes. And look, it's a freaking monkey. It should be way harder to connect with this, and there should be a much more difficult mental barrier. But the fact fact that, I don't know, the monkey idea almost toes the line of being a gimmick, but it actually works so well. I think the story works so much better because it's a monkey than it is some young pop star. It just adds this whole primal part to it because he was just an absolute animal when he was in his like peak addiction days. And that's what this movie's about, addiction. I'm not giving anything away. And the monkey part just also speaks to his mental health so well throughout the film and why this story needs to be told that way, and also why a monkey. I don't know, the CGI as well. I feel like we should talk about the CGI. It's amazing. It looks so good. The CGI is done by Weta FX, who have worked on like Lord of the Rings, Avatar 1 and 2, the whole Planet of the Apes trilogy. One of the biggest visual effects studios, and they've done amazing work. They've won so many Oscars in the past. So I'm not sure why I'm shocked. It looks great, but it looks great. Okay, back to some story elements. Rock DJ, which is one number from this that they've put clips out online. I have to say, it might be the best musical number of 2024 by so far. I got goosebumps. The use of the extras behind them and the background performers, oh my god, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the group's fame is growing, and I loved it. The costume changes, the colors, the song as well is just a banger. It was maybe the only Robbie Williams song I knew of, and I've seen so much praise for it online before going into it, and that was kind of the first clip that I saw that I was like, oh damn, is this about to be good? And again, energy. We've talked about energy so much in this review, but I just felt like a shot of energy in my arm watching that one clip. And in the movie, the whole thing playing out will blow your mind. Anything from Wicked, not even coming close to it. Any other musical or biopic, The End by Joshua Oppenheimer this year, doesn't come close to this. Rock DJ is like a musical number for the generations. Michael Gracie, every choreographer, every dancer, every singer, every actor that is involved in that deserves so much praise. There's great camera work. The editing is so tight in that sequence as well. Like, it's just perfect moments to do these big changes and swoops, and oh my god, like my head was going to explode. Now, speaking of shots of energy, there is so much drug use in this film. Like, maybe the most amount of blown lines per minute I've seen in a film. Like, it gives The Wolf of Wall Street a run for its money. I was absolutely blown. Like, oh, no pun intended, I was blown away. And it was very surprising, like, wow, they are really leaning into, like, he was just hammering lines every 5 minutes at this time. So maybe let's get into some nitpicks. Why not 5 stars? If I think this is such a great movie, why 5 stars? It follows the pretty classic biopic. David Ehrlich highlighted this in his review for IndieWire, which I love IndieWire. I'll recommend them any day of the week. But he says a really great summary of it is the rise, fall, recover formula. And that's exactly what this movie is. Like, it's everything you would expect a biopic to be, of, oh my god, they're so famous, oh my god, they're so cursed, oh my god, they're gonna ruin their life, oh thank god they're better now. That's what this movie is. I don't think I'm spoiling anything because it's the particular events that are interesting, not really the story formula and the performances and the songs, and like there's so many other elements other than just the story itself or the structure of it that are interesting and why I liked it. So you can probably guess where it ends up, and especially if you do know about Robbie Williams, I bet you could predict exactly where this movie ends up. And I was also reading Good Morning America's review, and they said, quote, it resists the usual biopic cliches that offer a glorified, watered down version of a life, not with this primitive primate, end quote. But I would say any biopic is still a very manipulated version of events to focus on the words of one person, the rise, fall, recovery of one person. Even with a primate, it's still a similar story to what we've seen many times. Maybe not polished, but packed in a certain way to be focused on one person in every situation. It's about one person more than the other. Like, this isn't a Nicole Applegate movie. It's not a Liam Gallagher movie. It's not like particularly focusing on the other people in his life. Every scene is about Robbie Williams. So it is a polished version. It's unfair to say it's falling through the usual cliches. If it was a story about like British pop at this time and all of these particular people, maybe it would have been a more even story. But every scene and every story is still very one-sided because we have to focus on the mentality of one character and our titular person, right? That's like, and that's not really a criticism. I'm just saying Good Morning America saying that it's avoiding the usual biopic cliches. I would disagree. There's many cliches in this film that you will see in every biopic. Like David Ehrlich said, it's following the classic rise, fall, recover. There are some moments that are probably way more polished than it was in real life, and that's just how it is. But still, the movie goes to some extremely dark and personal places. I mean, having a monkey on screen during these sequences still doesn't ruin it. It's an extremely personal and like revealing story, but we've had plenty of films with dark subject matter, and he's also extremely young when this is all happening. He's like 17 19 to I think 27 is how old he is at the end of the movie. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like it says in the synopsis, he's the youngest person in the boy band. And this is a lot to happen to a young person. Like if this happened to me, I don't know if I would be strong enough to get through it. Like Robbie Williams as well, I think this movie is just a credit to how strong he is. And like to this movie's credit as well, it has some sequences that I'll save for spoilers, but I never would have guessed they would include in this film and very much took me by surprise. Okay, overall, I think that's where I'm going to wrap up the non-spoiler section. I think Better Man is fantastic. It's heartfelt, it's deep, it's dark, super funny as well. Robbie Williams is just a hilarious guy, has amazing musical pieces in it. I would love to recommend this musical. I would love to recommend this to musical fans, pop fans, movie lovers in general. Like, yes, it is mature subject matter, so don't take your children to this, but it's just such a good experience, even if it's a familiar tale that we've seen with other pop stars. I think the delivery method and the structure of this film, it's fantastic, guys. Like, there is no reason this movie should be as good as it is. A monkey CGI biopic of Robbie Williams has no right to be this phenomenal. I loved it. It blew my mind. Like, there's still a lot working against it, and I don't know, if I saw it again, there's probably 100 nitpicks I could think of because it does follow a lot of familiar things, but still, Better Man is a 4 out of 5 stars for me. I really enjoyed it, but let's get into spoilers. Okay, spoilers for Better Man. You've been warned. Let's get into it. The first act of the film, it really does open the world to people who are not just his fans, but to people like me who really didn't know that much about him. And I think, like I said in non-spoilers, if you knew nothing about him, I think the start of this movie would really win you over to be like, oh, I do want to know more about this guy. Like, it really establishes early on in his life, and it's very sad how much he really struggles with self-esteem and sees himself as less evolved. It lays the seeds so well for the rest of the story. His dad leaving, I think he was 8 years old, to pursue a comedy career, which he never really fulfills, which is interesting how much his dad is riding his coattails in this film. That's why I said his dad is a very interesting character as well, but his life was very messed up early on. Establishes the grandma's relationship with him very well, but his dad leaving probably 20 minutes into the movie, and the amazing song Feel that he's singing in his room to his dad's jacket that he found in a dumpster across the street broke my heart. Like 20 minutes into the movie, I was crying already. I was just like, Jesus Christ, I'm crying over a CGI monkey. This hasn't happened since 2019 when War for the Planet of the Apes came out. I was literally listening to his Royal Albert Hall concert, which comes at the end of the film. I was listening to it while writing my notes, literally bawling my eyes out. When he goes to rehab at one point in the film, of course, and one quote he said really blew my mind, saying, "Your life freezes when you become famous. Life is a snapshot." Monkey Robbie Williams in rehab giving me one of the most memorable quotes of 2024 cinema. Your life freezing when you become famous. He got famous at 15. He's 27 at the end of the movie. And when he's in rehab, I think he's 25, 26, something like that. So for 10 years, he's kind of stuck being a teenager. And what would a teenager do if they got everything they ever wanted? They'd probably do some dumb shit. At no point in the story can you blame him for how misguided he is. And the movie just, plays that very well, of him constantly being immature and stuck in that teenage state. I'm going to talk about, I'll just talk about the scene I did not expect in this film. There's like a full-on superhero battle with versions of himself where he's fighting and killing other versions of himself. So there's a full-on monkey battle in this film. It's literally him fighting his own demons. In the middle of a concert, he starts having, like a panic attack or a depressive episode. And it was just kind of mind-blowing to see a full-on action sequence in a musical biopic about Robbie Williams. And he makes a very interesting point in the film. And I can't remember if it's during the end of the film where there's another water sequence or at the beginning. He makes an interesting point at one point about battling his demons, that he believes he would have been an addict in life no matter what, but fame takes it to a whole new level, and he has the means to make his addiction something way more crazy than perhaps a normal addict would. Just a very fascinating point, and again, how honest he is in this story. Maybe some people that are famous would have said, oh, well, I was only addicted because of how much pressure I had from my fans, or whatever it is. I don't know, maybe some people wouldn't have the stones to admit that, yeah, maybe I would have been an addict my whole life and there was nothing I could have done about it. I don't know. Addiction is different for everyone. And I talked about The Outrun last week or the week before. I do really find movies about addiction interesting. There's something so earnest and just different about them from any other type of film. I don't know why I connect with films about addiction so much, because I think I just find it such a fascinating topic, growing up in a time of such excess where everything we can have all the time, and it's just like peak consumerism and we can have everything at our fingers all the time. He never really has like a proper proper reconciliation with his mom. I feel like it's a lot of him coming to terms with his relationship with his grandma, with his dad. There's never a moment where we really get him connecting with his mom again or apologizing to his mom. He says like at the end in the concert, "I love you, mom." And I don't know, maybe him and his mom were always on good terms throughout his life, and that's why that's not an important part of the story. And in non-spoilers, I did mention Liam Gallagher. Liam and Noel Gallagher show up in this. They're a fun inclusion. It didn't feel like, oh my god, they're doing like a bunch of celebrity cameos that sometimes happen in biopics of like, hey man, what's your name? Paul McCartney. And it was like, okay. But it actually makes sense because I had no clue his fiance, Nicole Appleton, actually married Liam Gallagher after they broke up and has a child with Liam Gallagher as well. But also they were very good friends is what he says in the film. As a Manchester United fan, I hate the Gallagher brothers. I hate Oasis. They suck. I know they're a Manchester staple, but is it Noel Gallagher's a Man City fan? But like, it was cool to see them in the film, and I actually think I can't remember who played them, but they did a pretty good job, and they're very subtle in their performances. They're not trying to do some crazy SNL impersonation, which I enjoyed. But the death of his grandmother, that really hit me hard. I think that was the point. That was my low point of the film where I was like, holy Jesus. Other than the finale, which we'll talk about in a moment, I was a wreck. Look, how many times have we seen in a biopic a star losing themselves and they lose their personal relationships? A million times. Every biopic has, oh dude, you're not the same as when I knew you as a kid or whatever. But this one, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a monkey and how she does treat him like a bit of a monkey, but she loves him. But her repeating multiple times in the films, I wouldn't change a hair on your head. Fantastic. He was never playing for the fans. He's always playing for his family. As much as he loves fame, he was always trying to impress his dad. He's always trying to impress his grandma. And like during his peak drug days, that's when his grandma dies in the film. And it was like someone punched me in the face because I was crying like a baby in the cinema. Her death gives us the funeral sequence to the titular song, Better Man. I thought it was a perfect time for that song as well. And it is interesting in biopics. I like that, unlike like a Rolling Stone in A Complete Unknown, that was sprinkled out throughout the film, and it was like the process of Bob Dylan writing that song. In this film, they fully save it for when his grandma dies, and that's when we get that full titular song, and it's like, oh, that's what this is about, and it all makes sense. And I think it gives a little bit more of an emotional gravity or emotional power to the song rather than A Complete Unknown, which is like chopped throughout. I think that's equally as effective for what that movie's trying to tell of the electrification of, is that a word or is that electrifying? Electrocuting someone, of electrocuting Bob Dylan? Let's go with that. So I don't know, different methods, again, different structures and different delivery methods of a story or a version, but it just, I really loved what they did with that song. The final 20 minutes is basically just an apology tour of him going around saying sorry to everyone because he does finally fight his demons. He goes to rehab, he gets better, and it's just phenomenal. I actually really thought like, oh yeah, okay, it's kind of like cleansing the image here, but that's what the final step of his rehab is, you know, building those bridges back, and it works really well in the film. A couple more things to talk about. I really want to talk about the use of Frank Sinatra's My Way and that final performance, My Way, singing with his dad on stage, which didn't happen in real life, but it happens in this. Amazing. I was crying like a baby. One of the most heartfelt, reaching the top of the mountain moments. That's like such an earned redemption scene for me. I think it works so well. Look, you can hate biopics like I do. I really don't like biopics. I can't believe it because they have such a, wow, look at all they accomplished. And as I said, just like worshiping everything they did and worshiping the air they breathe and all that stuff. But this is such a different feel to it. It's not praising, oh, look how he changed the music industry. I think this is telling a really great comeback story. And look, I hate biopics, but god damn it, these guys got me good. If you haven't seen the real life footage of him singing My Way at Royal Albert Hall, can't recommend it enough. And like the lyrics as well, because the song he's singing at the start of the movie, he knocks over a TV antenna and he never gets to finish the song, and his dad leaves him like shortly after. So I just think the lyrics of My Way are just the perfect explanation for this entire movie, and I loved, it's almost like the writers of this movie are kind of smart. So let's go through some of the lyrics, and I just want to talk about them. So Frank Sinatra's My Way, quote, "For what is a man, what has he got?" At the start of the movie, his dad tells him, "You're either famous or you're a nobody. You've either got it or you're a nobody." Another quote, "Regrets, I've had a few. I did what I had to do." That's actually what his dad says in the film, but it's like them coming together and realizing they've both done bad things in their lives, and it's better for them to kind of just reconcile and reconnect and face the reality of now that they can be happy together and be a great father and son. Another line, quote, "I bit off more than I can chew, but through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall, and I did it my way." He's on the other side. Like, this is, again, the final scene of the film. He's jumped all the hurdles. Now he's here. He goes on this crazy journey. Literally 15 minutes earlier in in the film, or 20 minutes earlier in the film, it's Robbie in monkey form, standing on the pond of his big mansion with a razor blade against his wrist. He's clearly already cut one of his wrists, and he's about to end his life, and then he sees this light hit him, and it's one of the most evocative scenes of the film, or any biopic really. And then cut to 20 minutes later, he's gone, he's done all this healing, and it's just, again, such a great, reached the mountaintop when we thought it was bumpy along the way and maybe we won't make it. Maybe there's been some setbacks, but you know what? We reached the end of the race, and it was just fantastic. If you haven't watched the real life footage, go watch it, because it's mind-blowing, even if you're not a Robbie Williams fan. To sum up, look, this was such a crazy movie. I definitely judged this movie so early on, being like, monkey in movie, oh my god. But boy, oh boy, I ate my words. My tear-covered words. This was wonderful. Easily one of the best musical and best biopics of 2024. I don't know how many we got, but like, fantastic. Maybe my favorite biopic ever. I don't know. I would have to go back and look at every biopic I've watched, first of all, because there's a cajillion, but this is like such an easy 4 out of 5 for me. I think definitely the pacing issues hold it back, but let's get into what else I watched. What else I watched? Okay, I have so much stuff to talk about. 9 movies, 4 different TV show things, and a book. Let's start with the book. Superman and the Legion of Superheroes. A singular Jeff Johns book, I believe. It's about him traveling to the future. Videos up on my social media now. It was fantastic. This is my first solo Superman comic book, and it was just great. Like, I'm of the age where I only had Christopher Reeve on the VHS and Brandon Routh for one movie. But for a lot of my life, it's been Henry Cavill and depressing Superman. So to go back to like the source materials and have hopeful leadership Superman, God, it was so refreshing, and it was such a fun book as well. There's so many characters in it that are all these futuristic superheroes. It was just like fun to have the writers kind of hold our hands and have name tags constantly on the page. It was very helpful. I read it so fast. I think I read it in like an hour and a half a couple weekends ago, and I just tore through it. But let's move into TV shows. I want to say, before I get into TV shows, I haven't watched season 2 of Squid Games yet, but let's talk some Survivor season. So we finished Survivor Cagayan season 28, Brawn versus Brain versus Beauties. Tony wins the season. What a season it is. Look, as a kid, I loved Tony. As an adult, he played a pretty morally questionable game, swearing on his father's grave, on his kids, on his wife. He would swear on anything, and yet he still wins All Stars in season 40. Like, this is a guy that really will just separate his home life, and maybe that's what makes him such a great winner, or an easy winner, is he's willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do in separating life and game. Trish asks him at Final Tribal Council, Tony, you swore on your father's grave. Sorry, she says, Tony, you swore on your father's grave, with her Boston accent. Dear God, I love Trish so much. And she says, you swore on your father's grave. Was it worth it? And Tony, in a second, says, yes. And I think that's honestly how he won her vote. And the fact that Spencer at the end just stands up and tells the jury, I don't know why the hell you people would vote for Wu. He just played as Tony's guinea pig the entire time. Tony is the clear winner. And it's just like insane. The last like 2 Survivor seasons we've watched, Pearl Islands and this one, Final Tribal Council, has been brutal for one of the contestants getting dunked on, with Lil getting dunked on by the entire cast and everyone pretty much saying, we're voting for Sandra. Lil, there's nothing you can do. And that's almost how it felt with Cagayan as well, of everyone just being like, yeah, I think Tony needs to win because Wu did nothing, and Wu never made a decision. Then we started Survivor Cook Islands. Unfortunately, we only got 3 episodes in before our website that we were watching it on crashed. So hoping that website comes back, I'd like to watch more episodes. That is Survivor Cook Islands. That is where the first 3 days, or the first 2 boots of the episode, they are ethnically dividing the tribes, which kind of sounds like a crazy idea because it doesn't really play that much into the season. They do it for the first 2 boots and then they reshuffle the tribes. And I was talking about it with a friend of mine. They don't really do anything with it. It's like, all right, we have the tribe made up of African Americans. We have the Latino tribe. We have the white tribe. We have the Asian tribe. But it's like, still, just because you're, ethnically Asian or ethnically black, you can be like from different regions. Like a Korean and a Chinese person, or a Korean and a Vietnamese person, their cultures can be extremely different. So you're just like grouping ethnicities together and skin colors together. And honestly, you'd be surprised how many people didn't really bond. Pretty good. I don't know. It was so far we're 3 episodes in. I know who wins the season. It's from like 2003 or 2004, and I've seen it before. But also the Golden Globes, I guess we'll talk about that quickly. I made a reaction video on my social media. Go check that out. I'll just on the whole say Nikki Glaser did a really great job hosting. I was very happy with her performance. She was very funny. Amelia Perez, I don't know how it keeps winning awards. That movie is absolutely dog shit. Wicked is this year's Barbie. It's just getting the participation trophy and it's going to get snubbed. But for the rest of my thoughts, go to the Golden Globes social media video. And then I finished What If, the Marvel TV series season 3. It was okay. I think it started a little slow and then it got really good from episode 3 to episode 5, where it's like Red Guardian and Winter Soldier teaming up. That was such a fun episode. And then Darcy and Darcy and Howard the Duck having a baby together. I thought that was a hilarious episode. So there's like a couple of really great episodes in there. And then towards the end of the series, it really just like dovetails a bit or goes off the rails because it's just like, oh, let's bring Captain Carter back in. And it's like every season is kind of the same thing of, oh, we need Ultron with all the stones. We need the Watcher getting involved and he's starting to interfere. And it's like the same thing. Like they have a few episodes where they really try to branch out, a couple of episodes where they do nothing, like the start of this season, and then the other parts where they have to be bogged back down in an overarching storyline, which I don't really care about. But I don't know, like overall I thought What If was an interesting series, but for sure season 3 was the least interesting. But let's get into movies. Okay, as I said, 8 movies that I watched this week because I got a 4K TV and I'm just running through a bunch of my 4K discs, which by the way, 4K discs, absolutely terrible quality. If you get any smudge or any small little blemish on the disc, forget about it. I watched Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul last week. It was awesome. 4 stars. It was so much fun. As a kid, I was talking to one of my friends about this. I was terrified of Wallace and Gromit. She agrees that the animation and everything, the world is so scary for a child. But watching it as an adult, the new one is hilarious. There's so many great jokes punched in there, and it was just so much fun. I was so happy. It was weird how it was delayed to come out on Netflix in Canada, but the UK got it earlier, so damn the British. But a lot of fun. I would recommend it. I already talked about it on the show. Nosferatu. Took my girlfriend to go see it. Sat in the premiere seats. It was awesome. Even she thought it was really fun. She thought it slowed down a little bit in the second act, like I said, but still a lot of great stuff. On second watch, honestly, my thoughts are unchanged. If anything, I think Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp deserve even more credit. Like, it's just watching them a second time, there's so many things you pick up about their performances. Fantastic. Okay, some other movies. Interstellar. Watched it in 4K on my TV. Mind-blowing, like an out-of-body experience. I was levitating off the couch. So much fun, and it's just such a like heartfelt story. And I said in my Letterboxd review, like I watched it probably the first time I saw it I was 14, because it came out 2013 I want to say. So when I was younger, a lot of the stuff was kind of lost on me, but now watching it as an adult, there's just so much heart and emotion in the story. You know, it was my first 4K movie of the year watching it, but like, dear God, it was just amazing to see it in such crystal clear imagery on my TV. I wish I got to see it in 70 millimeter. I think it was my 4th or 5th time seeing it, and it still holds as much power as it did that first viewing. I think I understand it more as I'm older, like the deeper lying themes about love, and also I think it's interesting how it kind of also connects to like AI art, AI jobs, and AI world. You know, it's never going to know how it feels to create things from a place of fear or love or desperation. The power of love is immeasurable is basically the theme of the movie. So yeah, Interstellar rocks. I don't know. It's fantastic. Then another 4K movie I watched, Blade Runner 1982, the final cut. I know there's like 7 different versions. It's great. I've seen it a bunch of times, but again, another movie that you compare it to the first time you watched it, maybe as a teenager, and you're like, holy dear God, like this is so much deeper. Probably watched it as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, and I was like, okay, it's kind of boring, but I like the visual stuff of it. Now, watching it as a 24-year-old, it's just cool to see that story and how many moving elements there are. Like, it's still visual effects-wise one of the best looking movies to me. I think Blade Runner is fantastic. Both Interstellar and Blade Runner I gave 4.5 stars. But let's get into my lower star rating movies of the week. Man of Steel 2013. I'm finishing my Superman movies. Man, oh man, it's so much worse than I remember. I loved it when it came out in 2013. Now I watch it and there's so little that I like about it. There is such little hope and Superman-ness about the film. I can't believe it. Like, last time I watched it, it was probably a 3.5 stars. I was like, yeah, okay, there's probably more good than bad. Now I watch it and I'm like, holy shit, this is bleak. It's a little bit boring sometimes, and it just doesn't feel like a Superman movie. It feels so mishandled. 2 stars. Like, I think Man of Steel is probably the strongest DCEU Zack Snyder film, which is insane because it's like pretty bad. Maybe Batman v Superman just because of the warehouse fight, but there's just so much depressing stuff about Man of Steel. Woman of the Hour, Anna Kendrick's film. Such a weird structure. I don't want to give anything away. So it's about a woman that goes on a game show. She's this actress in LA, and it turns out one of the contestants is a serial killer that's kind of on the run or hasn't been figured out yet. And it just focuses on her pretty much the whole time, when it's like, I don't care about her. That sounds shallow to say. What about all the victims of this guy that murdered them all. And that is a much more, I don't know, interesting story to tell, or feels way more compelling and important to talk about, rather than someone that survived. And like, they give so many details in the credits. Like, you know, they do the classic text thing at the end where they're like, so and so went on to do this. And I'm like, all that stuff sounds way more interesting than this. So I don't know. I gave it 3 stars. And finally, the last 2 movies, Den of Thieves 1 and Den of Thieves 2 Pantera. So I wanted to see Den of Thieves 2 Pantera in theaters because I was like, I got to start seeing some 2025 movies. But I was like, wait, if it's a sequel, I have never heard of this franchise before. So I watched the first one, and it's like Sicario light. It's basically every good action heist movie of the last few years combined. And it kind of rocks. Like, Gerard Butler is just giving a really good performance and a fun performance. O'Shea Jackson Jr., Curtis 50 Cent Jackson as well. It was fun. I gave the first one 3.5 stars. I don't know if it's available on anything to watch in Canada. I had to rent it, which I don't mind. I don't mind renting movies, but it was fun. So then, of course, I saw the sequel in theaters right after, Better Man. It was just as fun, but I would say a worse movie. Really strange hearing like words that were familiar with me because there's like Serbian, Albanians in the film. So there was so much stuff that I was understanding being Croatian. There's a lot of soccer in the movies as well. I was like, did they make this movie in a lab for me? But the acting is quite bad in it, but still a very fun popcorn movie. And I think it's a really good heist movie in general that I would recommend. And there's a lot that I'm wanting to watch this week as well. As I said, I'm going to start Squid Games, I promise, but there's lots of stuff that I need to catch up on. So let me know what you think I should watch in my unemployment era now as I'm applying to jobs every day. Tons of movies coming out as well. Lots of 2024 releases finally coming out in Canada that I'm going to catch up on. But yeah, I think that's it for what else I watched. And you know, I think that's going to do it for episode 52, Better Man. Dude, what an episode. What a movie. So much more fun than I thought it was going to be. Now, just quickly, as we have seen in LA, things are in a very dire situation, and I just want to talk about World Central Kitchen for a moment. You might know them. Celebrities like Jennifer Gardner work with World Central Kitchen. So I just want to kind of read their mission statement, and I'm going to put a link below where you can go and donate. So World Central Kitchen's relief team is in Southern California to support first responders and families impacted by wildfires in the Los Angeles area. Our teams and partners have mobilized across the region to provide nourishing meals to people in need. WCK is the first to the front lines, providing meals in response to humanitarian, climate, and community crises. So I just want to highlight the work they're doing. Really great. If you donate now, you can help people that, you know, need food or whatever they're going to need on the front lines. People need to eat. A lot of people have lost their homes. It's the most costly wildfire in U.S. history, I believe. I mean, I'm in Ontario, Canada, so we had really bad wildfires in Canada that the smoke was insane in Ontario, I think 2 summers ago. So I can only imagine being by a wildfire that's the size of Manhattan. So my thoughts and my love go to everyone there. But that's going to do it for episode 52, everyone. Please rate and review the show 5 stars on all of your streaming platforms. Wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast. We are an Acast produced show. Leave a 5-star review down below. It might even be read on the show. On Spotify, you can even comment under episodes now, which is a really cool feature. What did you think of Better Man? If you are on the YouTube channel, which stay tuned, there will be a video dropping by the end of the month. Like, subscribe, comment down below under this video. What are you looking forward to in 2025 movie or TV show wise? If you've watched Squid Game Season 2, what'd you think of it? Hit the notification bell so you know when videos are dropping or when the podcast comes out every Monday. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email us, watcherofallthings@gmail.com. We also have social media. Instagram and Threads are @watcherofallthings. Nice and simple. That's @watcherofallthings. The TikTok is @watcher.of.all.things. Again, that's watcher.of.all.things. That's linked below as well. And my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Follow me on there. Drop a comment under one of my reviews saying you found me through the show. I'm going to throw you a follow back. Let's build our little community. Next week is our first 2025 release that we will be reviewing this year. Wolfman, the guy who made Invisible Man, doing that film. I'm very excited. I loved The Invisible Man. Looks really promising. I've only heard positive things. I cannot wait for that. But as for now, thank you so much for listening, for following, for all of the love. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. Happy January, and I will see you in the next one.